So I think I'll get started straight away now, as we have an hour to stay connected. And as I just said earlier, again, if you would like to present yourself, then please do so. If you have any questions, then write it in the chat. You can also write in the personal chat if there's something that you want to keep in there. So I'm here, Shân Nissen, my name is, and I have my co-presenter Jakob, who will be helping me through the session. A webinar which will be about children with special needs. And you ask any questions needed, and Jakob, he will do what he can to answer, or he'll stop me in the presentation, and I'll take the discussion with you in the way I can do it, as being in the webinar. So I think, again, if Jakob, he will be writing to you in the chat, my name will be there, but I'm not the one multitasking. Jakob is me, and I am Jakob. So hopefully it won't confuse anybody. So, and as I said a minute ago, there are some of you that have been following the last webinars. So I've, of course, been aware of that and trying to sort of put some new, both practical elements on, so that you have some inspiration for your lessons too, and also just sort of having a different focus with these special needs children might give you some more information too. So yes, I will share the screen with you in a moment. There won't be that many sort of hands-on exercises. I will be sort of pointing out loads of exercises to you that you can start working with from us tomorrow if you want to. You can start planning with them. So it's more talking about sort of different ways you can go, more than showing you sort of the practical elements and having Fable in usage. So you'll mostly be seeing my screen and listening to my voice, and I hope I can, we might put in a coffee break this time. I hope it'll be inspiring enough. But yeah, let's get started. So, and Jakob, if you have anything you want to add, you are so welcome, okay?
Yes, thank you, Shân. I will.
As usual. So there we go. The reason why I wanted to plan with this webinar was actually because we have some schools that use Fable that have children with special needs, some schools that are special educational schools. And we saw when we visited these schools how amazing the children could benefit from working with Fable. So this was sort of a kickstarter to this webinar, where I thought, okay, I really have to share this knowledge that we have and really sort of open your eyes towards how important it is to include Fable with these children in their learning life and their learning progression. Also, last year I visited a refugee camp which also has children with special needs, and I really saw how much they could benefit from it too. So these were sort of the two stepstones where I thought, okay, this is important for us to share. So some of the exercises here I did with them. So the things I will be focusing on are, of course, the advantages, and then looking into what the progression is, and again, how playful learning can actually benefit these children when working with robotics as a technology. And then I'll give you some activities and point out some things you can do. And again, looking here at the learning environment just as much as the activities in themselves, because this is a more important focus than you would maybe have in a normal class. So robotics in special education. I would say that we are of course not a unique sort of product in that way, that we're the first ones or the first movers in presenting these benefits. There are loads of different research which has been done to see how this can benefit special education, putting in technologies. And these technologies and application have, of course, been very diverse, and sort of many different ones are available. And these studies have been made And I don't have evidence as I'm sitting here of how Fable has sort of been a specific or has been making a difference in a specific way. But we have this that I told you earlier, the hands-on experience. And this will be an ongoing process where we will collect more of this experience and share it with you users, of course. So through this experience, we've identified these various advantages that I'll point out to you today, and how this sort of educational robot Fable can be brought in best possible way into a learning environment with these children. And of course, working with children with special needs, they are so different, every single one of them. And the schools that work with special education are also very different. So this is sort of a very general perspective I'll put on it. And at the same time, think of sort of individual learning progressions and individual learning paths. So robotics is an additional educational service that brings learning to the students in a completely different way, where the learning environment really supports the student. And it does this because it has a different approach to the teaching. And that is what we saw where we could, I'll give you a quotation later of one of the teachers. The way the students, they work with robotics is just a very positive and eye-opening way they've done it. So it's fun and it's playful, and this is sort of a general, you could say that this would be the same for any individual student with special needs or not. But I think just looking into this base of these 4 elements is important to be aware of when working with robotics. And we know that. This is also a benefit that this isn't new to you, I would say. So, but focusing on Fable, I always sort of thought, don't sort of, you have to show it, don't tell it. Today I will be telling you a bit more, and how Fable actually, what are the special things about Fable where these children can benefit of this specific robot. So the design of Fable is really nice because it has this non-threatening design. As you know, the ones of you, I'm sure you've all seen Fable. If you haven't, then please write it in the comments and I'll of course show you it at the end of the session. So it's something where the children, they feel safe because it has this harmless design and they dare play with it and experiment with it. Again, because it has an easy accessible software and hardware. So sort of both things, this way they get started is uncomplicated. And this being uncomplicated makes them sort of quite quickly feel success in what they work with. So they quickly get a response to what they do. And again, you can work sort of in smaller chunks with Fable, both with the hardware and the software. You can keep it very simple, but you can also sort of put together these divided chunks into bigger learning progression or learning paths. So the challenges that the children work with and the tasks that you can give them can really be very manageable. And at the same time, not too easy so that they don't feel that they are, what I find really important is that they don't have to be put on a lower bar, sort of a level than their ages, but still have to be challenged. And this is again where we see loads of really, really different students in the groups. Actually, the one school we visited, Jakob and I went there together. We ended up hiring one of these guys because he was sort of the brightest kid ever. And he just created some amazing things. And for him, the challenges were manageable on the level where he was working. And with Fable, you can sort of, again, put it into smaller chunks if you have students that actually don't find it that motivating to work with robots, but again, feel that they get success when handling it because it is just so easy accessible. So yeah, there's a picture of Marcus in a minute who's joined our team, helping us with some of the tests and developing things. That's really great. So communication and research and modeling all take sort of place at the same time, and they work in these processes all the time, the students. And these processes what I found really nice when talking to one of the students, I've put the quote on the side there, it's really important for them that it's sort of a familiar setting. And that's what I'll show you some examples of in a minute. They have to feel comfortable, not only with the adult, as the student says, but also with the way that the learning is, the setting of the learning is put up. So having the opportunity of giving them small chunks, giving them a quick sort of feel of success, and at the same time being able to differentiate in challenges, making them manageable depending on the level the students are on, is really important. So what a teacher said is that what he really liked about it is that we could get started building something that worked. And this is again sort of the feeling of success and really quickly being able to build their own robot that actually does something that they have either produced, coded, developed, and so on. So there are many other benefits one could sort of point out, but these were sort of some of the main ones. And again, here, these are some of the main elements I would like to sort of pinpoint when talking about the learning process. So these stand out when we've been visiting schools anyway and creating these workshops for students with special needs. So it's just sort of to show you what makes a robot a unique learning tool, because why should we bring this into class and with children with special needs? 3 things. First of all, feedback and the roles that the students are in and the cooperation that you bring into class. One thing is that the learners are able to sort of get this immediate feedback. There's the trial and error. They build something, as the teacher said, and they see a direct action after that. So there's a feeling of success. So the learners are able to fail and also not see it as a failure, but they have the opportunity to change again and to test it. And that whole trial and error situation in their learning process is really important, because I think they've had many difficulties learning. They have different difficulties, of course, in all sorts of different levels, but the feeling of success is really, really important, especially with these children. So I would say sort of, it's not unusual that it depends on, of course, how the teaching session normally is. But what I like about the learning process in Fable and in working with Blockly is that you get this instant feedback, and that is just really, really valuable when working with coding in general. So that's a really important point. What I also like, what I saw worked really neatly in these groups that we've been visiting, were the different roles they were in. So it was rewarding for them to sort of act as either product owners or developers. So when they had a task, they sort of, they didn't say it themselves, but you could sort of easily see how they could actually cooperate around something where they quite quickly came into a role that they felt comfortable in again. And this gives them some learning too. This is also part of the learning process. So it's not only about framing the subject, there's also something about giving them some new roles in the classroom where they've never been able to step into it before. So some kids were sort of really surprised when they saw how well some others worked as developers, and teachers again saw the children in completely different roles where they could see them sort of act in a much more positive and more motivated way. So again, if you sort of think of how you work differently when working with math or language lessons, and then trying to sort of put them into a new setting, then you actually get some rewarding things you can see out of this. This is really cool. Also, one of the elements that we've spoken to several of the teachers about is the element of cooperation that has been quite difficult again to sort of do group work. And here it's nice having sort of the third common, I've called it, sort of Fable as being the third common that you have to work around. So again, the children sort of sharing knowledge between different groups, which some of the teachers had never seen. So there were sort of new things that were put towards this learning environment. And also the peer-to-peer, that you can actually, if you have settings of children where you work sort of with different age levels and different class levels, you can work with peer-to-peer, thinking of the sort of the expertise some have, which some don't have. For example, reading. So some of these children in the groups couldn't read, the others could, and they could work with Fable block, sort of looking at the icons and the colors there, but there was really some great interaction, seeing the students working together in these peer-to-peer ways of cooperating. So again, this is working cross curricula in sort of through where the students, they bring these different experiences in, so they work in a cross-curricular way and also the cross-professional skills. So some of the learning outcome, I would say what I really find interesting and motivating for me as a teacher, if I should bring this into class, is that they do get these necessary skills. They work with collaboration in a new way. They do get cognitive skills, more self-confidence, and they practice their perception and spatial understanding when working with a robot like Fable. So this is around the learning process. So the next thing would then be the progression. And this teacher, I've quoted, says, if they are not the future workforce, then I don't know what else to call them. And this again is sort of what some of the teachers found as eye-opening, seeing how these students went into different roles and actually had some skills that they weren't aware of, because Fable again sort of brings, and robotics in general, when building, when prototyping, when using your imagination, when opening the box that's in your brain that normally maybe sort of works in specific other ways, and you can sort of really see different sides of the students and bring in some success that isn't linked to a specific subject, but actually into producing something that makes sense. So building a robot, making prototypes, and having fun at the same time. So the progression for me is, of course, not just the subject, but this is also about sort of personal skills that we can give these children with special needs. And one thing is, of course, that the students are challenged also in troubleshooting. So that's sort of one skill that you actually have to find out, why isn't this working? Again, the sort of trial and error. They have to plan also in some of the activities that you might create with them. And then they have to sort of, in this process, execute it and collaborate. So there are loads of learning in this part too, and they can get even better in that. So there's a great way of looking at the progression there. Also at the individual needs. So again, working with Fable, working with coding, you can really differentiate, and in that way sort of creates a progression for the individual students. As I told you earlier, learning in chunks and then putting these chunks more and more together is part of progressing also. So this teaches that I've quoted to, again, sort of underlines what I've said earlier about the feeling of success, that what she found really interesting was that she has these students that find it really difficult to sit still and find it really difficult to concentrate around the tasks that she gives them. But what we saw was that these students, they sat for hours and just continually sort of working and trying to work out how could they make the robot do a specific thing. This was actually the one group that I followed here. They were trying to create a robot that could serve drinks, and it actually, we managed. So I'll just show you, I'll just go out of this presentation and I'll see if I can show you this very small video. Jakob, you just have to be my eyes, okay? Can you see this video that I put on the screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah? You see there's a computer and Fable is up here?
Yeah. I can see that.
Guys, I'll show this video twice because it's super short. But this was something that these boys worked on a lot because they really wanted this to work. And we had to sort of look at which kind of cup do you put into the holder, what doesn't break. You see, we have several glasses on the table. And we had this product owner and developer working together. And this is what they did. So I hope you can see it. Again, they might be able to sort of, I'll show it to you again. One could do it a bit differently. I don't think you would drink a glass of milk that way at home, but it shows a lot of laugh anyway and happiness. So this was sort of a very sweet way of, and this was the teacher that I've quoted here working with these boys to see how they can actually succeed with something that they've produced. So the feeling of success is really important, and being able to see how they can sort of learn through several hours and not only sort of sitting concentrated for 10 seconds, but actually more time. And I think that's what leads me to sort of playful learning, because playful learning is, of course, also an interesting element when thinking of motivation. And if you just follow sort of the 5 rules that playful learning is based on, those are the ones to the right: the engagement, meaningfulness, and social interaction, iteration, and fun, then you will also get loads of motivation out of it. And this is where I think Fable is amazing, because it has this sort of Lego-like construction. As I said earlier, you dare to explore and investigate. You can create loads of different robots. There are thousands of opportunities. There are loads of ways of coding your robot into different playful elements, but also into anything that your imagination sort of sets a limit to. So work with this this setting also. Remember to put the playfulness in. Remember to put in some challenges and some competition, and I'll get back to that in a minute too. So this is always something you can be aware of too. Bring this in. I think it has a huge effect on the students' learning. So this is just a short picture of some of the things that I told you about. In the middle, you have a younger and an older student. To the left side, you have the sweet guy, Marcus, that we hired. And again, sort of seeing how children, they work individually, how they work in groups. That is just some of the sort of the pictures that I'd like to share with you from our experience that we've had. So now I'll sort of just talk to you about I'll give you some quite specific teaching examples in a minute. But what is really important is, of course, that you stage the learning environment first of all. So there's something different, of course, working with robotics, as you already know, and I'm sure you are a lot more experts in this than I am in many ways. But knowledge is, of course, constructed together. And Fable is something where we love that you sort of have the students working together in solving a problem. This might be difficult for some children with special needs. But again, if you can get them sort of to do this by setting up a learning environment, then it'll work for them. And still, working alone also brings magic. So you can do both. But again, sort of taking a choice as a teacher and sort of looking into, do I work in groups or do I let them work individual? What do I want to what's my goal in doing this choice? Do I want to work with projects that are longer? Is this group of children, can they do this? Or do I work in chunks? So when I went to the refugee camp, where I had a 3-day workshop, after the first day, I changed all my plans for the second and the third day because they wouldn't be able to work in projects. So I had to sort of really put all tasks into small chunks, break it up, and then we could sort of put these together on the third day and actually see them create some really good stuff. But I couldn't give them projects where they had to create themselves without sort of me having small goals and chunks and challenges that were set up. So this is also just, of course, you know the students better, and you know how to plan in the best possible way so that you give them the idea of learning something and the feeling of success. And again, think of the classroom setup, or how do you work with with the classroom setup, with individual places, or do you have sort of an open space? It's always nice seeing classrooms where you can be a lot more flexible around this, because this also gives the students a different learning experience that are breaking up what they usually are in. And for some, it's more difficult because they, as I said earlier, want to be in something they're used to, and it has to be sort of, they have to be able to know what they're used to. They have to recognize what they're in. So these are just some things you should have in mind when creating the learning environment around working with robotics. So some of the teaching examples that I'll show you, and these three that I've chosen, so one is a setting of 6 stations where you work with 6 different topics, or 6 different tasks, I would say, sorry, not topics. And these tasks sort of give the students some basic understanding of coding and of Fable. And then you can continue from there on with topics. I've just chosen Fable parts. Here's one example, but you can do the setting with different topics. And then a social robot at the end, I'll tell you why I would choose this as something being important and what the learning outcome would be of that. Then I've also chosen 3 competitions that you could put in between these this learning progression that you're building up with students. There's loads of learning in competitions too, and loads of skills for the students that are valuable. So let's look at the 6 stations. Jakob, if there are any questions in between, then is there anything?
I think no. I think there has been one, but everything's good. Yeah, that's fine.
So what I did when I planned this was that this was a learning environment I set up with 6 different stations. So the classroom was made into 6 different tables, and we had 6 different groups. Some worked individual, some worked in groups. So, or 6 teams, I would say then. So these teams had to sort of move from one table to the other. Of course, some were finished a bit quicker than others. That's why I've put this level up part on each exercise. So if you have some students that work a bit quicker, then you can sort of level up on challenging them a bit more. So at each of these exercises, I'd created the code already for them, and I'd printed it, and I'd stuck it to the table with tape, and the code was printed in black and white. And I did this because I thought I'd sort of give them something to work on, where they had to sort of read, they had to recognize, and they had to sort of discuss a bit, okay, how do we build this without knowing the colors? Because they were very minded on using Fable Blockly and the color setting of it. So this made them sort of read what these codes were actually. They had to sort of find, okay, this is in the action. So they looked at that more than they looked at the color. And in that way, we sort of taught them some of the main phrases that you use when coding. So this was just sort of a small tweak of something. And at the same time, I wanted them to get the feeling of success quite quickly. And I wanted them to sort of be able to work through this not in a too slow way, sort of get some activity where they actually felt success and managed the goal. So I will share these slides with you, and then you can sort of, in these slides, the links out to each single of these activities. The only thing that I don't have in the activity is the ready-made code. This is something you should do yourself. So you create the code and print it for the students. You could also, if you have a really good group of students, or you have 6 individual learners that you'd like to teach coding and that you want to give the opportunity to work with Fable, then you can do this setup too. It's a very comfortable way for them to work, and they feel safe in working in this kind of learning environment. That was what we experienced anyway. So the only thing, just to tell you, follow the leader. I haven't put a link in there because you have the code in Blockly already. I'll just show you that in a minute where you can find it. So the throwing arm activity is on our homepage, and this isn't what you should show the students. So this is just for you as a teacher to know how you create the throwing arm, what is needed for this. So on the table where the station is, you put these elements on, and you can even keep it more simple if you want to. You don't have to use the spins, but only the throwing arm, because that's what the point of it is. So you want the students to have the throwing arm and to throw a ball into a specific bowl or into, over specific lines. So do it as concrete as you want it to. And then you can level it up. You can ask them to do a plot on their code, or you can work with drawing parables. There are different ways of leveling it up. And again, if you need an easier level up, you can it can be of how many times can you throw the ball into the specific square or something. Then there's another one, the spin movement square. And this is where you code the spin to move in a square. And again, you can level it up where you include the eyes and you ask them to work with either the emotions and the coloring of the eyes. And again, if you click the link here, it'll bring you into the activity. Okay? You also have some video that can help you. So I won't click you through everything, but this is Solve the Maze. Again, where you have the joint module, you know that on the table you have to put the joint module, you have to put the lid of the box, you need the maze, you need the dongle and the computer, and the students can start. So this was the only one, Follow the Leader, that didn't have a link. And that is because if I open Fable Blockly, I will just show you where you can find this. So this sounds great. So if you go up to your folder in the left top corner, you want to open an example, you choose the joint examples, and you find Follow the Leader. So don't show the students this. They have to create this on them by themselves or on their own. So, but this is just for you to know that you have the code and then you can print it if you want to. Then you can also ask the children to build a humanoid robot. And again, keep it simple, give them the two joints, give them the main body as much as you want to create it, of course, and the Fable face, and then ask them to put in some emotion, some sound, and some movement. And if you want to level it up, ask them to upload their own sounds. And the last one was the spin and color sensors. Here you can work with the sensors and again create the code for the students so that they can change the colors, for example, and have some learning and some fun through that. So these are 6 elements where you both teach them something about the senses, you teach them how they can use movement and sound, emotions and feelings, and they get an idea of how you put together these codes because you've already built them. So if you can bring it to the next level with some of the students, you might open up the talk and talk to them about how would you analyze this code, what is important in it, why does it look as it does, and so on and so forth. This depends again on your students. But again, the learning setting, the environment that we've put into this with having stations, you could also just have 4 this is a really good way of working because they can concentrate around one thing at a time. And talking about time, this setting I can't tell you how long it will take. It depends on your students. It took me 3 hours with the students to work through these 6 stations. 3 hours was including sort of getting started together and unpacking or packing things together, not unpacking. So that of course depends on the level of your students and the working ability. So this was one example. The other one was sort of how you could work with topics. And here I've chosen, you could of course have many different topics. On our homepage you can find a world of sort of innovative topics, and all sorts of inspiration, of course, and also where the lessons vary in level and in subjects. So that is the sort of the great thing about Fable. It can cover a lot. So what you can do is you can choose your own topic, or you can sort of get a setup from our homepage. What I've chosen is the topic Fable Party, because this is something I find playful and was really nice. And I did the setup with these youngsters, the young boys who did the drinking robot. But this is a fun way of including some of the activities that we have on the homepage too. We have sort of Fable the comedian. I think we also have Fable the waiter, Jakob, am I right? We have sort of different, isn't it called?
Yeah, I think, we have a Fable butler robot, I think it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, Fable butler, that's right.
So,
exactly.
So you could sort of get some if the students need a more sort of concrete topic, you can do that. But otherwise, this is sort of a way you can also teach them some other skills that are needed. And I know it can be very difficult. And I know you have loads of different ways of brainstorming. We could talk about that for a long time, how to create the best way of doing a brainstorm. But keep it simple and let the students choose some ideas they can work with. And then collect or sort of choose one idea of the ones that you've put up in your brainstorm, and then try to sort of draw your solution in some kind of way. And this could, again, be something where you say, okay, I've chosen 6 ideas. We need a comedian at the party. We need a butler at the party. We need a DJ at the party. We need somebody to pour drinks. And we need somebody to give us peanuts, and so on and so forth. So either way, you can do it very concrete, or you can actually use this process as it is sort of more a design thinking process that I'm putting them in. And then the students, they create the code and they build their robot. Again, by the trial and error, they test it, they present it, they work with the skills of presenting something. And this is what I like when working with the design thinking process, is that what I saw when some of the students at the refugee camp, when they needed a break, for example, I gave them sort of small activities where I said, okay, then draw what you think is the future school bag. Or I gave them small clips, and I asked them to sort of create them into a new form. So give them these small brain break activities, and they can sort of present some different sides of them. And when they talk about the thing they've made, they do it in a very proud way. So this can both be something where you ask them to be creative. You can ask them to present their solution that they've drawn, or you can ask them to present their robot that they've coded, and they're very proud of what they've done. So even just putting on a few words, or just showing a drawing or a video of what they've done, is also a very, very good element of when working with the children with special needs. So there's a learning and just listening to each other, of course. That it's also something that I work on with my children, and they don't have special needs in any way. So I know this is a general problem maybe, but this is also important to try and test the students in this direction. So the last thing that you could put into your class and plan of activities is the social robot. And what I find really lovely about this is that here you can really work with some of the personal skills and sort of the whole emotion part of yourself. So either work with creating a dialogue where you actually are more in charge, where you as a teacher have created the questions and the students have to answer the questions with their robot. So you can get to know your students in a way they don't sort of have this imaginary audience syndrome. Some of them have, and that you can work with them in a different way, including the robot, because they are not the ones in charge in a direct way. They can create sort of a copy of themselves. And this is something that we see as also it benefits a lot to sort of giving others an idea of who you are as a person. So they can really sort of put some words into who they are. I can just show you shortly how I did it with one example here. Just hang on a moment. This is the code that I've just put together. You see the code, Jakob?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the code that I've just put together where my question as a teacher would be something that I've handed out to them. What is your name? How old are you? And what do you like doing? And the student has to answer. And the student does this in Fable Blockly, where they use the senses, the conditions that if I press a specific key, I answer to question 1, and so on and so forth. And then they've just put in text to speech. You can also ask them to use the audio, but I think this is a nice way, again, of not bringing their own voice into the game, but just the audio. So if I play this now.
My name is Peter.
Peter has a very light voice. I know he's a woman here. So all that was quite sweet.
I am 13 years old. I love playing basketball.
So this is a way you can work with it too. I don't have the robot here. This is a code that I've just put together where the dialogue could sort of be the basic focus of presenting yourself as a student. So again, you can sort of build up the robot from there and put in the emotions through the Fable eyes. We have some really, really cool features that will be coming soon. There will be a webinar in, I think, a fortnight from now, where there'll be some new features towards the Fable eyes that are really, really cool. So again, this is sort of bringing in personality, bringing in some storytelling, which is really good when working with these children with special needs. And again, you can sort of create the social robot. That would be another way of doing it. That brings value to the learner. This could be asking the students to create their best friend, asking them to create a robot pet that they would like, or even having a classroom robot that could assist the teacher or assist a student if some things are difficult. One might have a motivator next to yourself that then could be the robot. So that would also be a way of working with it. And I'd like to sort of give you tiny news, which is really, really interesting, because at the moment we're developing a telepresence robot. And many of these children that have special needs actually find it really difficult to go into schools. So with this telepresence robot, we actually solve a problem that is really, really difficulty for both parents, students, and teachers to educate the students as being home. We've also seen this in the Corona time. I wish we'd had the robot finished now. But we'll be saying a lot more about it. We'll be presenting the product soon. So please just remember, sign up to our newsletters and listen in the social media. There'll be a lot more about it. But I think this could really be a game changer, because the robot, as being a telepresence robot, would sort of link the two worlds to each other, both the educational world with the children in their private rooms, which they can really benefit from. So it can give them some better social skills in time and also keep them educated. So this is another way of using Fable with these 3 different activities. So both sort of having this environment set up with, for example, 6 stations. The second one looking into sort of more design thinking process, and this third one, which brings in more sort of storytelling element, brings in the personality of the students into robots. These are 3 really great activities. So competitions is something that we could also benefit from. Here I would say, again, this is the playfulness that I talked about earlier. One picture to the left was sort of who can design the craziest robot, the most fun robot, who can sort of, this is something you can also do with your personalized humanoid robots, sort of create a whole environment around the robot, sew some clothes for it, sort of give it a wig, any sort of thing that you think gives the robot some personality. That's a really fun way of doing it. But I've sort of taken 3 different ones: throw the ball, drive a maze, and collect a robot, I've called it. So throw the ball was the one that I showed you earlier, the exercise, where you could actually have it as a kind of competition where you see who can throw the ball in these 3 different lengths. So first you want to throw the ball sort of 2 meters, then maybe 1.50 meters, and then at the end you'd like them to hit a small glass. So who can manage that in the quickest way? So they have to create a code to do that. Drive a maze is also really fun. You can ask the children to build the maze and somebody else has to drive it, or you do a very easy one. As you see on the right side, there's a picture where the students, it was actually a task they created themselves. They said, oh, let's just put the papers on the floor, and they did it really quickly. And then they tried to see who could they timed how quickly the spin module drove through this, or drove on this area of the papers. This was a really, really easy way of creating a maze. And the papers you could use again afterwards, nothing with throwing out or anything. So that was cool. And the third one, collect a robot, is also something where the energy level is really high. What I did was I created 4 areas in the classroom. I put tape on the floor, and it was sort of a square meter tape. And then I put different things in the middle of the room, which each student group then had to collect these things and put them into the squares. So I had 4 groups, and they had to create the code. Of course, you could also give it to them beforehand, where they steer either the spin with the phone module, with the phone, or you could ask them to steer it with the joint module for the leader, or you could create a code where you actually steer it with the keyboard. And then they had to collect all these things, and at the end we then had to sort of count who has collected most things in their square. And this was sort of quite a quick competition. You could just put loads of Lego on the floor, and then they can quickly sort of collect them, or each group can get a specific color, because then they don't sort of, what I found was that they pushed each other a bit with the robots, and they were sort of quarreling around who took the different things away from each other. But if you give them each a color, the group 4 has to collect all the blue Legos, group 3 all the red ones, and so on. Then it's a more concrete problem that they have to solve. So that would also be a way of doing it. So these are sort of just 3 small competitions that you can put in between and still have some learning and some fun. And again, I think this gives the children with the special needs a different way of working with something, because they find success in it and they actually have to work together around solving these tasks. So this is sort of just a small video from the Ready School, where we had children from refugee
Hallo,
camps.
ich bin die Shân Nissen. Ich arbeite als Unterrichterin
I
bei
won't
Robotics. Heute sind wir also hier bei der Ready School.
say much more now, but I will.
Integriert.
It's in German, you know.
Wir versuchen also
The link is in the presentation, and you can see the video there. But it should have.
Shân.
Just wanted to show you it. It's in German, so there is English text on it when you watch it on YouTube. But it gives you an idea of one of the competitions that we had was the one with throwing the ball, where we had to throw it into the net. I found sort of basketball net. And another competition that I mentioned to you about the 4 different spaces on the floor is also shown in this one. So this just gives you an idea of Fable in action now that I didn't only tell, but there's also a bit of show in this.
Shân?
So
can
you can see
Shân? Do
afterwards
you hear me?
if you feel like it. So this was it for now. And Jakob, I will just go into presentation mode again here, away from presentation mode. And then
Shân, can you hear me?
if there are any questions, then please feel free to ask, or if there are any topics that you'd like us to dig deeper into. This is, of course, a very sort of general way of talking about children with special needs. We're not experts, but this was sharing some experience, and I hope you could use it, and I hope it inspired you, so that you have some great activities you can start using in your classes.
Can you hear me?
So if there's anything, Jakob, that you think I should
Can you hear me?
sort of say more? You don't hear me?
I can't. Can't you hear me? I can hear you.
Would somebody write in the chat if you hear me or not? I don't know if Jakob is the only one who doesn't hear me. Okay, you hear both of us. That's good. Thank you, Patrick and Dean. So, great. Jakob, sorry. I think you're the only one. I don't hear you, but and you obviously don't hear me, but as long as you guys do. But yes, please, if you have any questions, do write them, and we can take them now. And otherwise, then reach out to us, and I will make sure tomorrow you will be able to see the video again. You'll get an email with a replay, and also I will make sure that I send the slides to you, so that you have all the links that I pointed out. And then hopefully you can get usage of this in your classrooms. I hope so anyway. So if there's no more, then yeah, we can share the presentation now. I can do that. Yeah. We can do that. Straight after the, yes. Yeah, I can, I'll send the presentation to you without the comments that are on if you want to, but otherwise, because then you don't have to sort of wait for me to open the access into Google Docs. So, but I can do that. I'll just, yeah, but thank you. I think I won't sort of waste more of your time. And then hopefully, oh, Jakob, I see you already shared. That's good. So great. You are so welcome to open the Google Docs document, but I will also send it to you so that you have it as a PDF. Good. But take care, guys, and I hope this was valuable to you, and then stay well and stay safe. And please come to our next webinars in a fortnight from now. There will be a webinar about artificial intelligence, which will be by Moises, one of the founders of Fable. So I think that'll be really interesting. So please join us, and you can keep yourself updated on our social media and in our newsletters. And then take care, and take care of the kids.